In this lesson, we're going to discuss updates and patches. Now, updates and patches are an important part of your hardening efforts. After all, one of the best ways to increase the security of our workstations and servers is to ensure that we have a good patch management program in place. When a software developer discovers a bug or error in their code, they're going to develop a code fix for it and then release a software patch. These are designed to plug any security holes in a piece of software, such as operating systems, applications, cloud instances, or even our firmware. Now, a formal patch management system should be used inside of our organizations, and this system is going to ensure that we have a routine method for scanning our network for vulnerabilities and ensuring that our systems are updated with the proper software patches to prevent these vulnerabilities from getting exploited. Patch management can be a manual process, an automated process, or a combination of both of these. It is quite rare that anyone conducts their patch management program fully manually these days, though, because the amount of workload involved would just be way too much. For the most part, we're going to use patch management software tools to automate the checking of our endpoints to see if they need that given patch. Then, we can automatically deploy it to those machines when they need it. Some administrators will also manually implement patches on sensitive high-value systems, but for the most part, we try to automate as much of the patch deployment as possible for our general information technology and client systems. When a software manufacturer like Microsoft releases a patch, though, hackers are going to often try to reverse engineer these patches to discover the vulnerability that Microsoft was trying to protect against. This can happen very quickly and often in just a few days after a patch is released. This reverse engineering develops a usable exploit for attackers that they can then use to try to break into your networks. For example, many data breaches in the headlines are simply the result of missing a software patch. If the system had the proper hotfixes, updates, or service packs installed, then a hacker would simply not be able to exploit them so easily. Now, a hotfix is a software patch that involves a security issue that should be applied immediately after being tested in your lab environment because the vulnerability could be exploited by an attacker. An update is going to provide the system with some kind of additional functionality, but it doesn't usually provide any kind of patching of security-related issues. In fact, updates, because they provide new functions and features, can often introduce new security vulnerabilities that are going to require another hotfix to be implemented. When a significant number of these security patches and hotfixes have been released, as is the case with the Microsoft Windows operating system, they'll actually bundle them all together into a single installer known as a service pack. This includes all the hotfixes and updates since the release of that operating system. For example, Windows XP, which was released back in 2001, have been updated many times over its long 13-year lifecycle, and the final release was Windows XP Service Pack 3 that contained thousands of updates and hotfixes over the original Windows XP operating system. So, what constitutes an effective patch management program? Well, first, you need to make sure you have an individual or a specific team that's responsible for tracking all of the vendor-supplied security patch bulletins and releases when they come out. Second, you need to have a mechanism in place to patch your operating systems and all your applications on all of your systems. If possible, this should be an automated process as well because it will make sure that things are being done properly even if people are off work that day because it's a weekend or a holiday. Third, you should ensure you account for your cloud-based resources as part of your patch management as well. And fourth, you should review and triage all your patches as urgent, important, and non-critical. That way, you can prioritize your patching efforts and dedicate the proper amount of resources to it. Fifth, you should have a lab or test environment in which you're going to test all your urgent and important patches to make sure the functionality is right prior to deploying them to your production environment. Sixth, you should maintain detailed logs of your patching activity so that way you can evaluate and monitor your patch management program and its deployments. Seventh, you should have a mechanism to evaluate, test, and deploy firmware updates. Eighth, you should have a technical process in place to push urgent patches and hotfixes into the production environment if they've been approved by an emergency change advisory board. And finally, ninth, you should conduct an evaluation of non-critical patches for a combined rollout periodically. For example, every 2 weeks, you might be scheduled to deploy all your non-critical patches, and this way you can do them all at once in one big push. So remember, updates and patches are crucial to the security of your devices, and you need to have a patch management program in place to make sure you can minimize the risk of attack. When it comes to updates and patches, remember there are 3 main types that we have to consider. These are hotfixes, updates, and service packs. A hotfix is a security patch that solves a security issue and should be applied immediately after being tested in your lab environment to make sure that vulnerability cannot be exploited by attackers. An update, on the other hand, is going to provide your system with additional functionality, but it doesn't usually give you any patching of security-related issues. And a service pack is going to be a collection of hundreds or thousands of hotfixes and updates into one installer file so that when you install a new operating system, you can install all the security patches by using one installer file instead of having to go out and collect 100 or 1,000 different hotfixes and security updates to be able to implement them on your system.